Hi guys, it's Aoife from Fred Weasley Died Laughing and I'm here with my 2nd December weekly wrap up. And I am wearing the same jumper that I was wearing in my last video that I uploaded, but we have literally had about a month of constant wind and rain in Ireland at the moment, and today is another very wet, very windy, very cold day, and I just needed my snug jumper, so I put it on. And yeah, so I was away for this week. I had some time off from work, so I went up to Donegal with my dad and my dogs, and we had a great week's long holiday up there, walking the beach, even in the wind and the rain and the hail, but it was still lovely, and I was able to sit in front of the fire and read a good few books, and I was very happy. So the first book that I read this week was The Queen of the Tearling by Erika Johansen. I have heard a lot about this book. I'm sure a lot of other people have been hearing a lot about this book over the past year, and I was just really intrigued to see what it was all about. And I know that it is becoming a movie with Emma Watson playing the main character, so again I was very intrigued to see what it was all about. And I wasn't disappointed. This book is basically, all I knew going into this book was that it's about a girl called Kelsey who at 19 years of age, she kind of is going to become the queen of this place called Tearling. And she's kind of at a kind of disadvantage because for 19 years she has been hidden away. She has been kind of in safekeeping until she gets to the proper age where she can be crowned queen. And Kelsey knows very little about the land that she is going to be queen of. She doesn't know very much about the people, about what her mother did as a queen. And it kind of just goes from there about Kelsey learning how to be a queen, what sort of things she should, start changing, what she can change, who she can and can't kind of get angry with. It's kind of hard to explain. It's a very diplomatic book because most of the book is set around Kelsey learning to rule. And it's a bit of a frustrating book, I felt, because while the writing was very good, the land was very good, there's not that much world building, which I've heard before. Kelsey doesn't take, there's not a whole load of Kelsey travelling to other lands. There's kind of one journey and then that's more or less it, and then Kelsey gets to where the city is and she stays there. And no one will tell Kelsey kind of different things about, stuff her mum did when she was the queen, why her mother might not be considered a great queen, and why Kelsey, has sort of problems with different people. And I felt for a lot of it, as a reader, I was frustrated because I wasn't getting enough information at the same time that Kelsey wasn't getting enough information. And I couldn't understand why so much was being kept from her when she was the queen and she was supposed to be trying to rule this land, and they were treating her as a child for a lot of the time, yet she was supposed to be queen and they weren't really listening to her, and it was really, really annoying for me as a reader trying to understand what was going on. So that was one of my main problems with the book, and I did like Kelsey. I think I'd like to get to know her a bit more. I liked the fact that she kind of described herself as a little bit of a chunky character. She wasn't extremely thin, which is kind of funny because Emma Watson is playing her in a movie, and Emma Watson is like very thin, but Kelsey is, she says it herself that she has a little bit too much weight on her if she wants to be an able swordswoman, which she is learning to do. She needs to lose a little bit of weight, but at the same time she loves her meals and she loves second and third helpings of meals, and I really liked that because it felt so normal. I felt like Kelsey was a normal girl who, she wasn't a great beauty. She was very plain. She had a round face, a snub nose, like a curvy belly, bum, boobs. She's just a very normal person. You could almost kind of see, I think a reader could see herself, you could see yourself in Kelsey. I did like there was a big absence of a romantic relationship in this book, and I did enjoy that. There was a few characters who Kelsey had chemistry with, and I did enjoy the few interactions she had with those, but I liked the fact that this book concentrated on Kelsey's becoming queen. and not about, you know, she was becoming queen, but her whole mindset was focused on this romantic relationship, which could have happened in a lot of other books, but this didn't, and that was quite good. So I'm looking forward to the next book and seeing if these romantic relationships kind of kick off a little bit. There is one that's, you know, kind of been hinted at, but I'd like to see another, which I don't know would happen, but it's something that I have in my head. I'd like her to maybe have a little bit of a romantic fling with one character. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4.5 stars just because I did feel my frustration with the lack of information I was getting, so I knocked a 0.5 star off, but overall a 4.5 stars, and I recommend anyone who hasn't read it yet to give it a go. The next book I read was a real mood read for me, and I'm not a huge mood reader, but for some reason all I wanted to read this week was Obsidian by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And I've heard a lot about this book. I've heard all the comparisons to Twilight about this book, and I was like, I don't know, I just really wanted to read it. So I went on and I read it, and I was telling myself, I'm not going to like this book. This book is going to be just a copy of Twilight, and I'm not going to like it. I might enjoy it, but I'm not going to love it. And I ended up loving it. Oh my god, I really loved this book. This book has been compared to Twilight, and obviously it is going to be, I think any book is going to be compared to Twilight when it's young adult. It's a girl moving to a new town and kind of becoming involved with a mysterious boy who could have supernatural entities, and yeah, it's going to be compared to Twilight. Any of those kind of books are. But I think this is very like Twilight, but it's kind of like Twilight on another level. Instead of vampires, we have aliens, and then instead of a very grey, withdrawn female character, I felt that Katie, who's the main character in this book, I really liked her, and I didn't expect to like her. I kind of expected another Bella who, you know, let her whole life become evolved around this one guy and, you know, kind of had nothing else going for her except that. But Katie was so different. Katie had a little bit of spunk. You know, she was able to make friends outside of just this one supernatural family. She, you know, she had her own things. She had her family. She had her own, you know, she loved books. She had her own book blog, which, you know, obviously I could definitely identify with. And there was just something about her I just really liked. And I don't know, I think it's just the fact that she was able to stand up for herself. She wasn't afraid to stand up for herself, and she wasn't afraid to walk away from Damon, who's the main boy, when he was annoying her, when he was being an asshole. She was able to call him out on it. She was able to defend herself, and she was able to kind of show him that she could be without him. And the romantic relationship in this book is very obvious and evident in one word. Ovident. I don't know where that came from. It's very evident from the get-go that there's this huge chemistry between these two characters, but it takes a long time for them to really kind of really acknowledge it and really acknowledge the fact that they do want to be with each other. But at the same time, they're kind of, both of them are holding back for different reasons. Damon for, you know, a whole different reason compared to, you know, what he is and how he can't really be with a human. And Katie's because she just doesn't want to kind of give Damon the satisfaction that she likes him and she wants to be with him, which I really loved. But I really enjoyed this. It was a very fast-paced read, and I gave it a 4.5 stars, but I think it could almost be a 5 stars. I think I'm just being a bit picky with not giving it a 5 stars, but 4.5, 5 out of 5 stars. I really can't wait to read the rest of the series. The next book that I read this week was Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. This was my TBR jar pick of the month, and this is one of the few Jane Austens that I have not read. The other one is Mansfield Park. That is the only one I've left to read, and I really enjoyed this book. I didn't know what to expect. I knew it was kind of a gothic satire / comedy kind of book, and I did definitely laugh a lot while reading this. There was just some characters, most of the characters in this are very over the top. The main girl, Catherine, she kind of gets these ideas about people that is like so unrealistic, and she was quite funny. She was quite pleasant to read about. But then there were other characters. Her friend's brother was real over the top and used to say real funny things, like he wouldn't let his sisters ride in the carriage with them because their ankles were too flat, and he'd like say it to them, and he'd kind of tell them that their dresses were ugly and all this kind of stuff, like real like out there kind of stuff. And it was very funny, and it did make me laugh. The only thing is that this is called Northanger Abbey, but they don't actually get to Northanger Abbey up until like more than halfway through the book, and most of the rest of the book is all set in Bath, where Catherine visits and she meets kind of the man that she decides that, you know, is going to be her husband, and, you know, she has one conversation with him and then she's completely obsessed with him, and, you know, she's set her eyes on him and she wants him. And yeah, but I did really enjoy it, as I have enjoyed most of Jane Austen's other novels. It's probably not my favourite. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but I laughed, I enjoyed it, and yeah, that's all you really want from a book, isn't it? The last book I read this week I finished this morning, and it was A History of Glitter and Blood by Hannah Moskowitz. And this was a NetGalley book. It's probably not something I would have picked up on my own, but this is a really hard one to explain. This is basically kind of a biography of a war between fairies and gnomes in a fairy town or fairy city called Farum. And there's these 4 fairy children or teenagers, and they're the only fairies left in this city. And it's written in a very strange way, and after a while it becomes evident that the story has been written down by one of the characters. And, you know, now and again in the book he kind of starts talking to himself, and he's saying, you know, oh, I shouldn't have put that in, or, you know, forget about that part's silly, or, you know, I really loved when she did that, or I'm sorry to he says I'm sorry to the characters that he's talking about. And it's just really strange, and it took me a while to get used to the style of writing that it was. And yeah, so I don't know if anyone had seen my updates on this, but it's basically some of these fairies, they're fairy children, but they're kind of half fairy, half something else, because fairy women in this book can't have children because they're born without a uterus. So they're always like half fairy, half gnome, or half fairy, half something else. And there's all sorts of really weird creatures in this land. There's like these things called tightropers, who are basically like humans, except they can like spit rope out of their mouth, and then they only have 2 toes, so they can they're called tightropers, so they can, you know, walk across the ropes. Across the sky. And then there's ones called backpackers, who carry their children in their back when they're pregnant, and they have to carve their children out of their back, so they normally die when they give birth to their children. It's really, really weird. And then these 2 of the fairies, or 3 of the fairies in this book, were kind of prostitutes to the gnomes, and the gnomes' food source was mostly fairies. So every time they went down to kind of service the gnomes, they were always in trouble of being eaten alive. And yeah, I think like that kind of sums up the weirdness of this book, and I'm not really sure how I can really explain what this book is about, because it's just so strange. And there's basically a war going on between the fairies and the gnomes and the tightropers, and these kids are left to kind of defend for themselves. But they become friends with a tightroper, and they become friends with the gnomes, and then all this weird stuff happens, and it's just really weird, and I kind of hated it and I loved it at the same time. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but I can't find it in myself to recommend people read it, but I enjoyed the book. So I think you can take that as you will, and if you want to read it you can go and read it, but I'm not recommending people to read it. And that is probably the worst review of all time of a book. I just can't really... I'll link my review below of the book, and maybe hopefully that will make more sense. But yeah, so that was all I read this week. I hope people are having a wonderful week, that you have a wonderful week this week, and I will see you guys again next time. So bye!